The victim in today's case was found in the middle of the day, murdered without warning for seemingly no reason whatsoever.
Just a quick disclaimer, the content presented in this podcast is based on real events and may contain graphic descriptions of violence, crime scenes and other disturbing material. Listener discretion is advised.
This episode is sponsored by Think Forensic.
Think Forensic are a one-stop shop for all things forensic science and crime solving. They hold experience days, as well as corporate events, team building events, and general education for primary school right the way up to university level, as well as other events and consultancy. There's also a shop where you can get your hands on all things crime solving, from evidence gathering to packaging and collecting evidence, as well as other forensic science equipment.
For more information or to book on an experience day, please visit the website. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Grave Secrets. We're your hosts, I'm Annie.
And I'm Beth. Today we have another case study for you. We're going to get stuck into it. Unfortunately, the case that we're covering today, we're seeing is becoming more and more common.
Yeah.
When we're researching for cases, we try not to do too
many that are similar.
That are similar causes of death. But it's unbelievable the amount now that are just becoming almost
the same, aren't they?
Yeah, repetitions of each other. And it just goes to show how prevalent these crimes are becoming, which is kind of all the more reason to talk about them. So the victim in today's case was found in the middle of the day, murdered without warning for seemingly no reason whatsoever.
This is hard though, because we hear this all the time where people say, oh, they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But they weren't in the wrong place. They were literally doing nothing. It's all they were doing is, walking home from school, walking to the shops. Yeah. And this happens. It's not even a wrong place, wrong time, is it?
No, it's just horrendous. So it's a tough one today. We'll warn you, this case involves young people. So as always, please listen with caution. But we're going to start just last year on this case. So one of the most recent ones I think we've ever done, really.
When I was researching this, I thought we have not done one this recent. I don't think ever. I think 2024 might have been our most recent.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of information out there about this as well.
Horrendous? I had not heard about this case whatsoever.
Nope, I hadn't, no. And it's not a million miles away from us. So this is actually in the West Midlands, so in Birmingham, which is like an hour and a half drive away.
I was near Birmingham this weekend, actually. It would probably take about 2 hours from us.
Yeah.
And again, the UK is not a vast place, so to think that this didn't even come across our radar is really upsetting. So Tuesday, the 21st of January, as I say, this was last year, 2025. Again, we've quite commonly said now that a call comes in to 999. So this is a UK case. And a call comes in to West Midlands Police. It's a woman who sounds incredibly shaken, and she says that she has found a boy in school uniform who looks about 12, and she believes he's been stabbed in the stomach.
It's just so young, isn't it? And just to reiterate, this call comes in before 4 p.m.
Yeah.
Like, it's broad daylight, and a young boy has been through this in a park.
Yeah, so it was Trittiford Mill Park, and obviously all hands are on deck from the off, and 8 paramedics actually headed out to the scene. You could see footage. You can kind of get access to the body cam footage. I'm getting better at that now.
Not
body
dash cam
footage. And it did look quite chaotic. The female caller is present at the scene. There's also 2 young boys that also look like they're maybe of school age. And then you've got the 8 paramedics.
Yeah, and at the time, that the phone call was made to 999, the lady actually stated that she thought he was still breathing, but the police and the ambulance needed to make the way to the scene really quickly, because she said the breathing was it shallow? Yeah, really, really shallow breathing. But at this point, when I started researching this, and I thought, if I didn't know like the title of this, I thought, oh, there might be a chance that, you know, they might have got to him in time, and that he probably could get the help.
Survived, yeah. If we just describe the location as well. So obviously you've got kind of country parks, but this particular park was almost like more of a walk along a river. Yeah. Only a real narrow river. It wasn't a huge, wide, fast flowing river. But along a path, and then you've got the river to either the left or right hand side of it, and then quite a lot of overgrowth. There wasn't an awful lot of nice grassy areas.
It's not like a big open space, was it?
No. And then further down from the scene was a bridge over the water, which then headed into another area of the park. But like Annie said, incredibly built up or popular area. Lots of people would have been either travelling back from school or walking dogs. Yeah. You know, it's a popular time of day, so you just would never, ever imagine anything like
No, you wouldn't, would you? And I go out walking the dogs at any time, and I never once think like, well, I didn't before these cases, I never once thought anything were going to happen.
No.
And I went out on my dog walk yesterday, and I thought, oh, this looks a bit similar to something we've covered in a case. And it does make you think, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Even though I was in broad daylight. So the paramedics start work on the victim, and they did detect a weak pulse. So this was at 4:22. So not long after, obviously the 999 calls come in, the paramedics must have got out there pretty quick, and they have got a pulse.
How heartbreaking was it as well when they were saying, come on, you can do this. Oh. They were speaking to the victim.
Yeah, and even on the 999 call, the lady who stopped to help him was like, open your eyes, stay with me, you can do it, weren't she?
Yeah, and she was even saying, like, you're doing really well, that's it. Like, it's just...
And she must have been in shock as well.
But that's what you would want, isn't it, in that situation? Yeah. Obviously, these people are all strangers to you, but the humanity in it and them kind of supporting you through it. I know that quite often 999 dispatchers get quite a lot of flack for the way that they deal with things, but I think everyone in this case was kind of as really good, as they could be.
Yeah, so then there's a witness also at the scene who had named the boy. He actually knew who he was and said that he went to the same school as him. So in this case, the police didn't have to really do much work to identify the victim because the witness knew who he was. The witness actually said he was called Leo Ross and he was just 12 years old.
Horrendous.
Still in his school uniform as well. So then... Now, obviously, Leo is rushed to hospital via an air ambulance.
And at that point, the scene then needs to be investigated. So, unlike most crime scenes, this one is a little bit different, and it actually makes it more complicated because the paramedics have all gone in there to try and save Leo, but they have then left all of their equipment behind. So there were bandages, there's kind of medical scissors and things like that.
Yeah.
But your forensic scene investigators have then got to go in.
Makes it a little bit more difficult.
And analyse it all.
We do speak about this sometimes because the paramedics have got a total different is it called motive? Not motive? Objective than obviously the forensics. So they've got to preserve life, so they're not bothered about contaminating the scene, treading on anything. Their main focus is to obviously preserve life, whereas when forensics go in after, they're then looking for the evidence and preserving the scene. So it's a little bit of a different one.
The scene itself appeared to be quite confined, and what I mean by that is that there wasn't an awful lot of crucial evidence spread across this area. Leo was actually found just to the side of the path, in almost the undergrowth, and it appeared that he had or his coat had been removed, that there was just him there and not a lot else. There was no sign of a weapon, even though from the off, really, it did appear that he had been stabbed.
Yeah.
No sign of a weapon, but then you've got all of the medical equipment. So even though it's quite a confined scene, because of the nature of it being a longer path, you've then got quite a widespread area that is still going to have to search.
Yeah, and as well in this case, even though the immediate area is cordoned off, you would have, I think we probably spoke about it before in here, like your inner and your outer cordons. So you'd have like a cordon around the area where the offence has taken place, but then in the UK, the weather can turn at any point. That all then needs to be covered, especially for an outdoor scene, because if it's left open to the elements, then forensic evidence can be ruined. So it needs to be covered straight away. But then when you've got an area like a park like this, you've got that many entry and exit points. Yeah. You don't know which way the offender's gone, so all these points need to be covered as well. So your outer cordon would basically be the entire park, which I think, if I remember rightly, was about a 4-kilometre area.
So the forensic investigator on this case was a man called Drew Birtles, and again he made exactly those points, said it was quite complicated because of all those things that you've got to factor in. They found clothing at the scene which appeared to potentially have had Leo's blood on. They did believe that he'd been stabbed with something, but what that was unclear. And it could have potentially been something other than a knife if this was a spur-of-the-moment attack, because, again, motive is really unclear at this stage.
Yeah.
They also found a school tie among one of the items, which you just can't imagine. When he's put his tie on in the morning to go to school, you don't think that it's going to end up.
And is what I did as well, like 12 years old, obviously, is very, very young, but you compare it to someone who's 12 years old, exactly, and you think they're like still a proper child. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. What is it, year 7 at school? You've only just gone up to secondary school.
Yeah, no, horrendous. So they then secured the scene overnight because they've still not identified the weapon. By 8 a.m. the following morning, the media had already got hold of the case. We've said that Leo's name had already kind of been given to paramedics and police at that stage. And unfortunately, with the nature of social media now, it's likely that his name was then put out there on social media. Again, because of the location and how popular the park was. As soon as you've got kind of ambulances, paramedics, police officers on scene, you know what it's like. It's going to create...
And did you notice even the witness, the young boy who identified Leo?
Yeah.
He even said, I've just rung my mum and told her that...
Yes.
Leo's been stabbed or something, didn't they?
Yeah.
So, like, he's already told his mum. His mum's then going to probably be worried and ring her friends and say, like, are your sons in that park? Are your kids in that park? Yeah. Get them out of there. And then the kids talk between themselves, and then it just goes on and on and on, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's just awful, because however good social media is in some cases for finding out information, getting the word out there, in this case, if Leo's family have not been informed, you do not want them to find out from a social media post.
And it's all right saying, oh yeah, that's Leo, but you are then basing it off the word of another young child.
Yeah.
So you're still going to have to confirm it.
Yeah.
Leo, as we said, was taken to hospital, but unfortunately was later confirmed as having died from his injuries. So within the space of 24 hours, even less, we're now looking at a murder case.
Yeah.
With the attack having taken place at around 3:00, it appeared that Leo would have likely have either been on his way home from school or meeting up with someone after school. 2 detectives were on the case, so a man called Joe Davenport, he was the lead detective, and then DC James Noble. Again, they decided to look at that initial call that came through to 999 and then the witness statements from the people that were present. And the young boy that identified Leo also said that he'd seen Leo there but didn't know how to help, admitted that he looked pale and that he'd got blood across his stomach, and there were no immediate suspects because no one was in the area at the time acting suspiciously. No one saw anyone run away from the scene. And again, we've talked about how motive is just absolutely unclear.
It's lucky that lady came to help then, isn't it? Because if the young boy didn't really know what to do, probably in shock himself, then, you know, if the lady wasn't there.
But that then makes you think, well, maybe this isn't kind of youth knife crime related, because there's no groups of youths, there's no one that's left the scene. Is it a robbery, but are you going to be robbing a 12-year-old boy
in broad daylight?
So there's a lot to assess, really, and obviously investigators are working as quickly as possible to try and get some answers.
So they've done the door-to-door to see if they can find any CCTV images, and it becomes more and more prevalent now in cases that we're talking about CCTV. But in this one in particular, they go into some new technology, which I'm going to tell you about. So 6 search teams are searching the surrounding areas. So they're trying to locate the murder weapon. So they are searching through sort of grassy areas in sort of the undergrowth, but it is sort of boggy. You've got running water. There's so many factors in there that could damage the evidence, that could remove forensic evidence from the weapon if it is there.
It was that thick with like thistle and undergrowth that there was one of the officers said, if you can't physically make your way through it, then you're going to have to go through it with a stick and kind of comb it. Searching on the hands and knees, and the weather, as you said, is not going
to be on our side, is it? So with the CCTV, they get the footage and they start analysing hours and hours of footage. So what they want to do here is, we've come across this in cases before, they're working backwards to try and locate Leo on the CCTV images so that they can trace his movements then forward. They want to see his last movements and find out if there was any interaction with anyone along the way, if there's any disagreements that could have then followed onto the park and led to the attack. School had just finished, so everyone's coming out of school. Everyone's in the same uniform. Everyone's got black shoes. Everyone's got a black bag. Like, it's your standard school uniform. So on the CCTV, it is very, very difficult for officers to be able to pick up Leo. So this is where the new technology comes in. And I was quite impressed by this. When I saw it being rolled out. So this is new AI technology, and it allows the police to go through CCTV much quicker. So what they can do is upload a photograph. So in this case, they would upload a photograph of Leo to this sort of database or this search engine, and then the AI technology would go through all the CCTV and bring back images of who they thought were Leo. So then it brings them back. They might not all be 100% accurate. So then it's down to the police to go through and narrow those down. But with this one, it actually picks up Leo leaving school, and it was really good because he glanced over for a second, didn't he? He literally turned his head for a split second,
which makes it more difficult.
And the CCTV picked this up. So what would normally have taken the police hours and hours and hours of trawling through the CCTV footage,
that'd have probably been 3 days.
Was done in minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which I thought is a really good tool to have. Just to cut down the time, and then they've got more time to spend on the rest of the case as well, haven't they? So Leo actually was identified walking towards the park. The last sighting of him was at 3:10 p.m, just as he enters the park, and at this point he was alone.
And in an ideal world, you almost want to see Leo in a fight with someone. You want to see
so you've got a suspect,
following him, because that would make the case a lot easier, and you would then have a clear kind of path, so to speak, to go down, to follow. But unfortunately, that is not always the way. He doesn't look distressed on the footage. He's just with a big swathe of people.
Just left school like a normal day, hasn't he?
Just left school, and he then is heading towards the park on his own. After Leo's name had been released to the press, and it did hit the kind of news pretty quickly. People began learning just what a wonderful young boy Leo was. He was said to be a beautiful child. He was funny, kind, and sweet, and he didn't have an angry bone in his body. So you hear about a young person being attacked in a park, and people would, unfortunately these days, assume that it might be something like gang related.
Yeah.
But there was no indication whatsoever that this would be the case.
Or that it was involved in anything like that.
No. The community very quickly started gathering together to pay their respects. There was a lot of kind of solemn footage, I thought, of officers kind of combing the local area. I saw some footage of them like along a pavement, and you've got people in the background that are obviously kind of laying flowers or things, and it's right outside some people's homes. You just, again, you imagine
such a built up area.
Suddenly you don't feel safe in a place that you've probably felt safe for years. So there were over 200 CCTV cameras to analyse, and you think about the amount of Ring doorbell footage, things like that you've got to go through. And it was actually a man called Andy McDonald who was the one that was sifting through, using this AI footage or software to assist with going through the footage, and then looking for any sense of a trigger. The problem is there's no footage inside the park.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is the same in every park, but surely there should be something put in, maybe a couple of cameras inside parks, because like exact situations like that, at least entry and exit points.
But then I think, so our house backs onto the Transpennine Trail, which is effectively a really long path that goes...
Mine does now too.
All across,
So I could get to your house from mine.
All across an area of the north. And it would be almost impossible, wouldn't it, to have cameras
along the way.
Path.
Yeah. Or would it be though?
Well, it depends where they want to plough.
I mean, I don't think... The thing is, I don't think a lot of crime takes place there. Yeah, but maybe if you're in an area which is a bit more high crime, they should be maybe prioritised.
Having said that, there was a murder further down, one of my favourite spots of the back path.
Really?
There was a body found a few years ago, yeah.
Didn't hear about that one.
So it's hard, but in this case, they had nothing to go on. So they could see that he entered the park, but then after that, it's kind of anyone's guess. And unfortunately, when it comes to trial, there's no guesses, there's no guesswork. You have to be sure of everything. So the best way to find out any form of categorical evidence of what's happened is by looking at Leo's post-mortem. And the post-mortem confirmed that Leo had suffered a stab wound to the abdomen. It had actually gone right through to his spine. So you imagine the amount of pressure, force, and the length of that weapon. That shows how brutal the attack was. Post-mortem analysis believed that the weapon was likely smooth-bladed and likely to be a kitchen knife. I think it's important to note at this point that there's an awful lot of work going into knife crime awareness.
Yeah.
And you might have seen the Let's Be Blunt campaign that's now out there. We know an incredible lady that has been instrumental in putting some of this work together and working on research into the area. And thankfully now in supermarkets you can actually buy these blunt-ended kitchen knives, which are designed specifically to, well, just limit the amount of damage that can be done by using one of these knives as a weapon, which is horrendous that we even have to consider, but unfortunately that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So they now know what kind of weapon they are looking for, but that's still not been identified.
And you think in a park like that, how many things have maybe been discarded? So, not particularly, I wouldn't say there have been knives everywhere, but like how many we've said it before when they've been looking in rivers or lakes or something, what you've got in there, like your shopping trolleys, bits that people just throw in. There's still going to be a lot of items in that park to go through, isn't there?
The post-mortem also suggested that Leo very likely did not see this attack coming. He likely had no self-defense injuries, so it would have just been within a split second.
Yeah. So I thought then, with that, did he know the attacker? You know, 'cause sometimes with no defense wounds, let the attacker get close enough to you. So I thought at this point, you're thinking, is it someone from his school? That he knows.
So by 2 days later, 50 officers have been deployed, and they are all tasked with looking for this murder weapon within a 1 kilometre radius.
So 1 kilometre, when you think about it, is huge, isn't it? Just think of the ground that you've got to cover when, like we've said earlier, you're exposed to the elements, and you've got the long grass, you've got bits that are boggy, you've got water, like you said earlier, you've got the river running down the side. This would have been such a hard task, and what they had to do is break it down into small areas. So you'd have your 1 kilometre radius, you'd have that broken down into all smaller sections, you'd have a team on each section, and then you'd have them combing through those smaller sections.
What I did think was really nice or good was that the senior search officer, a man called Brian Stetham, said that he was constantly reiterating to the officers that were searching to look just as thoroughly as they would if they were looking for evidence in one of their loved ones' case.
Yeah.
Because when you're searching for hours on end, you're bound to kind of think, I can't see anything there, move on.
It'd be so hard because you'd want to find something and you don't want to miss something, but when it's been going on for that long, just even your concentration goes off for a second, you could miss something.
Even when if we liken it to when you've been driving for a long period of time, how dangerous not concentrating on the road can be for yourself and for other people, and yet it's still very easy to lose
just drift off, like mind goes elsewhere, doesn't it? And you think about something else and you think, oh God, I've driven.
So I thought it was really good that he was so kind of strict on that, because you don't want to miss anything. It could be the difference between getting a guilty verdict and not.
And at the same time, always bringing it back to the victim and reminding people that
you've got a young boy that's been killed. So they'd also got 8 officers coordinating the search of the canal, which was really thick silt. And they did believe that this work would pay off because it appeared that this attack wasn't well thought out. No offender really thinks about the aftermath as much as you assume that they might do. So they did believe that they wouldn't have been thinking in a logical or controlled way. Therefore, they'd come across some evidence at some stage that had likely been disposed of. But they haven't got anything so far, so they're having to go back to CCTV evidence and get as much as they could, really.
So in this case, the police also review body cam footage from the first responders, which I think was a really important part to this, because they're trying to identify who was there, if anyone was around, if anyone was sort of in the background.
Yeah.
So they did actually notice, we touched on earlier, that there was 2 young boys. There was one on a bike, but one of the young boys looks younger than the other.
Yeah.
And when he's talking to police, he looks pretty much in shock. He is very cooperative, is trying to sort of do what he can, say what he can, while also, he's at a crime scene, isn't he? Where someone's been really badly injured. But the older one sort of is more towards the back, has took a step back from everyone. I think he's trying to put a little bit of distance between him and the police.
He's laid his bike down on the bank at one point. Then he's has picked it up, and when people almost lean on the handlebars so that they're leaning into whoever they're talking to. also had a kind of puffer jacket on, black trousers, but
black
it
gloves
wasn't
as well,
as
didn't they?
distinct in terms of like, oh yeah, they've just left school.
Yeah, he didn't really look like he'd been to school. He didn't have the school uniform on at this point. And I think the police thought, well, he gave his name to the police and gave his age. Obviously, if you've witnessed something and you're at a crime scene, you do have to do that.
Yeah.
And, they found out that he was, 14 years old, I think. So he should have technically been at school.
So I've got a direct quote from what he said at the crime scene, and when they asked what they were doing in the area and what they'd seen, he said he was already like that when we got here, that's all I know about it. And then stated that he saw the woman come up, he told her to come to call the police, and said, I haven't touched him because it could put me in the case.
Yeah, a weird thing to say, because my first response would be, if I saw someone like that, to go and help them.
Yeah.
And to try and save them, to ring the police, to do anything you can.
Yeah.
But in this case, it was left to the woman.
And it's so difficult to say, because this is a 14-year-old boy, just witnessed likely something horrific. You don't necessarily know how you're going to deal with something until you're in that situation. Not only that, but we've got to factor it in. The relationship that a lot of people have with the police isn't good.
I thought this.
And I think that a lot of young boys, again, unfortunately, potentially would have that mindset of, I don't want to get kind of tarred with the brush of being involved when I've not had anything to do with it.
He'd either been involved with the police in the past for like petty stuff and thought like, oh, I'm going to big it up to this other boy. Like sort of like bravado, I thought a bit, because he also said to the younger boy that was there, oh, when the police come, I'll have to leave. So it was almost like he was making out he was a bit of a bad boy. Yeah. And I thought he was just sort of playing up to the other kid.
So it is really hard to know, but it did seem like an odd thing to say. They needed, obviously, to find out who these witnesses were, and that is when the officers checked, and it becomes clear at that stage that the 14-year-old had, in fact, been previously known to the police.
Yeah, so because he'd given his name, they can just run it through the police national database and find out the convictions. He'd actually got attempting to assault a police officer.
And that was only back in, I think, the previous January, so a year ago.
He'd been expelled from school, hence why he wasn't at school that day.
And that offence had taken place on school grounds as well.
Yeah, and he'd also assaulted a family therapist who was working with him, but he assaulted the family therapist in that same park. So, he's got quite a string of violent assaults already at 14 years old.
Yeah, and clearly wasn't kind of scared of the police, had the potential to be dangerous, so they did then decide at that stage to put a warrant out for his arrest. They arrested him from his family home, and at that point he actually turned to his dad and said, turn my PlayStation off.
Yeah.
Not the kind of thing that you would assume would be your first thought. You'd be like, no, Dad, please help. Don't let them take me. But
or you'd be worried,
relaxed for a 14-year-old that had just been arrested.
The whole arrest footage from this was quite disturbing.
Yeah.
So this boy who was arrested was a boy called Kian Moulton, and he was very blasé. He was laughing. He was laughing in general. He was just, I don't know, there's an air of arrogance, wasn't there?
Yeah, he was placed in the police van and he actually smiled to himself, and one of the officers that was sat next to him in the back of the van actually kind of clocked it and said, you do know that you've been arrested for murder. And he then again smiles to himself and says, I'm not saying it's funny, am I? Am I not allowed to smile? And then shrugs his shoulders. And when the officer then says something else, he swears at the officer. And again, you think it does appear to be a lot of bravado. So has this person got anything to do with it, or are they just on such a point of proving to police that they are this...
They're just acting up,
kid, that they're not even considering what the repercussions of this are.
And you think at some point here, like maybe when he gets to the police station, it might... kick in and think like, oh God, this is what I'm being arrested for.
Yeah.
But even getting out of the police van, you know, they say, we're going to take your clothes. And he said, oh, well, you're not going to find anything on these clothes or something, didn't he?
Yeah, he turned to them and said, oh, by the way, you won't get off nothing of these. I've got changed, and you won't get any off the clothes in my room earlier because I've not done anything.
Yeah.
But it's that level of...
Arrogance,
that's quite shocking, and the awareness. So he's obviously aware that they're going to now be searching his home.
He's got a lot of awareness for what they're going to do as a 14-year-old boy, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So it just makes you think, how many times has he been in trouble? And because of what he's doing and how he's acting, the police do get a search warrant, search his home for clothing, a phone, a murder weapon.
Yeah. So they seize his PlayStation, his clothing, and then obviously search his house. They also take obviously DNA samples from him, and as much as all this is great, you've still got no clear link between Leo and the suspect. It doesn't appear they knew each other prior. Obviously they'd have been in separate year groups, and there is no clear digital link at that point that they could identify. The suspect wasn't actually believed to have owned a mobile phone. Leo had a phone, but that wasn't at the scene. So that makes it more difficult to potentially prove a link if there is one.
And at this point as well, they've already brought Leo in for questioning. So they've only got 92 hours. So that is not a long time to get the evidence tested and get a link.
I found that interesting though, because it's usually 72. So I thought, they said it's not a lot of time, but then I thought that sounded like...
because it was 92. I don't know, maybe...
Because they said with his age, they weren't allowed to hold him for so long.
Yeah.
But I thought, that's still kind of better.
It's still quite a long time. But then when you think about the times it takes to test... So it was Eurofin's forensics lab that were dealing with analysing the forensic evidence.
They're the biggest in the UK, really, aren't they?
And, you know, even though they are the biggest, it still takes a while. Like, you can't fast track every single item. You have to go through it and choose what you think is going to be most beneficial for your case. So some things were fast tracked through. The clothing that they seized from the suspect's house was fast tracked. So what they did there is they had a lady going through, and she was looking under like this big magnifying glass. She was looking at areas where there could be any blood. But the thing is, it was a very dark jacket. She even said that the seams were dark, the stitching was dark. It's hard to see anything on there. But then she thought, oh yeah, there's a part here that seems to have got something on it.
This was on a big black puffer jacket, wasn't
but it's, you know, you could have got anything on that coat. It could have been food from school, it could have been, you know, anything. So what they have to do is do a presumptive blood test, because you can't just send it off and think, oh yeah, I think that's blood. And in this one, they did use the Castle-Mayer test, didn't they, to do the presumptive test. So that will tell you if there is blood present. So then if there is blood present, then you can take a swab and send it off to the lab instead of wasting time and it not being blood. But in this case, the presumptive blood testing didn't detect any blood on the coat where the forensic scientist thought it was.
No.
And his shoes revealed nothing either, so they were tested.
It must be so frustrating at
I know.
stage. You've already got very little to go on, and then
it just keeps coming back, nothing.
And you're not getting any breakthroughs. While all this is going on, of course, they are still conducting interviews with anyone that might have any knowledge whatsoever of the suspect, but also of what Leo was doing at that time. And Leo's school friends were interviewed. They said that they weren't aware that Leo was known to this suspect or vice versa. In interview with the suspect, protocol obviously is slightly different to interviewing an adult. And if you've listened to our episode about the James Bulger murder, you'll know that they can only be held in custody for so long, and that there always has to be an appropriate adult. And that's based off the PACE principles. Again, you wouldn't necessarily think that a 14-year-old would be as aware as he was
of the procedures.
But what happened was, it was obviously processed in custody, charged on suspicion of murder, and by the first interview, the initial interview, the suspect had already prepared a statement.
So I think this obviously had a lot to do with whatever solicitor he got, or whoever was in there with him. But I was still quite shocked at this statement.
So the statement read, "I am 14. I am diagnosed with ADHD, ODD, anxiety and attachment disorder, and I am also on the autistic spectrum. I was diagnosed with these conditions at around the age of 6. I am also under the care of numerous mental health services, and so will be answering no comment and remaining silent due to these conditions." I do think that is a horrific number of things to have gone through by the age of 14.
And he did have a family therapist as well, didn't he? So we know there is some background to... we don't know which one of these.
It's also very, very difficult to get diagnoses for these things in the UK. There is a very long wait list. And if this suspect has already been given all of these diagnoses by the age of 6 and upward, that shows just how severe they must be. Because otherwise... Generally speaking, I know people that have been in like their late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
And they've been on wait lists for years. And
I know people who have been diagnosed in the 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it does show the level that they've probably had to go through to get them.
Yeah.
Police then decide, obviously they can't do an awful lot with that statement, but what they can still do is talk to the suspect. The suspect doesn't have to respond, but they will then have the footage of how the suspect is reacting, looking at body language and things like that. So they are still asking the suspect whether or not he had any connection to Leo. They press him to answer whether or not he was in the area at the time. They even then play the body cam footage from the scene back to the suspect and ask if they know any more information. But that interview gives them nothing.
Nothing really, does it? No. So if we go on to Saturday the 25th, which is 4 days later, we said earlier that the police had taken the PlayStation from the suspect's house. So even though the suspect didn't have a phone to go through like messaging, I didn't know this, but they said the PlayStation had like a dongle with it. It was sort of like a USB stick. And if you've got one of those in the PlayStation, it means that it suggests that it can be used for messaging. So when they tried
to... one of them on my laptop.
Yeah.
And it just connects you to usually it's a mouse and a keyboard.
Yeah.
So it's likely that then you can sit on your console at a distance, but then you can also pick up your keyboard and then message
from a distance as well. Yeah. So this was actually password protected, which is a bit strange if it's just on a PlayStation. And I know that, I'm not very up on PlayStations, but I know you can play games and you can type to people and talk to people and you have headsets on and whatever else, don't they? But if it's password protected, is there any need for that to be password protected?
And this was as soon as you turn the device on. So most people will have an account, and maybe if they're going to spend money on the account or to get into specific games, they'll be password protected. But this was as soon as you turn the device on, which is quite rare because usually you'd be the only one kind of playing it.
And they did actually ask Ian, didn't they, for the password in the interview? They went back to the interview and said, "Are you willing to give us the password?" And he said straight up,
I'm not giving it.
Yeah.
It was encrypted, and Discord's quite commonly used, which is online, which actually means that there's no data as such stored on the device. It's all within this cloud. Obviously, officers can try and get access to the password or guess what the password is, but they don't want to get locked out of the account.
I didn't understand here, though. They had a guy who was going through and putting in, like, you know, the typical passwords like date of birth and whatever else. How come this didn't go to digital?
Well, I wasn't sure whether he was part of the digital team.
But then he was just guessing the password, wasn't he?
Yeah,
you know, normally
more technical.
They plug it in and it comes up with combinations, doesn't it? And I don't actually know how they do it, but like I thought, oh, has this not gone to the digital team? Because he said, didn't he, rang him up and said, oh, I've done his date of birth, I've done this, I've done that, and I thought, oh, I wonder why that didn't get sort of fast track to digital.
One thing that's really important within all of that analysis is that there's basically a camera, just like we've got a camera set up on a tripod, and that is recording anything that is being done on those devices. Because again, if the device gets turned off, back on again, and it deletes everything, or they get locked out of the account, they've got that footage to go back and have a look at. Ultimately, they ended up speaking to the suspect's family and asking for access to the password. And thankfully, they not only knew it, but then also gave it up to the police so they could then further analyse it. But while all this is going on, they are still searching the park. So these searches of the park have now been going on for 5 days. And finally, it appears that these searches might have paid off, because near the edge of the park, there was a slight discoloration to some leaves. They look underneath these leaves, and a black-handled knife is found, which appears to be a kitchen knife. Obviously, photographs are taken, and then that knife is taken back to the lab for testing. They do exactly what they would have done on the puffer jacket. Testing, they'll just use swabs. And they are looking for either the suspect's DNA or in fact confirmation that it has been used in the attack
so
of
that
Leo.
Could be, they could be looking for blood on the handle, on, you know, like the little joins in between, on the blade. They could be looking cellular material. So it's not just blood they're looking for, it's DNA in general from either the suspect or the victim.
What was important about that find as well is that the end of the knife had actually been broken off, which unfortunately quite commonly happens when it has been used with force, and it could have then been used in Leo's murder.
You know what you also get as well sometimes from knives, with looking at the bones, if someone's stabbed sort of in the abdomen area, it's really horrible, but the knife can get stuck in between the ribs, and you often find like grooves on the upper ribs and the bottom of one rib and the top of the other, where the knife's gone in and sort of got stuck in between there. So when you analyse bones, that's one of the telltale signs that someone has been stabbed.
So this is potentially a huge breakthrough for the case. Meanwhile, over 5,000 hours of CCTV have been analysed, and they're now looking for the suspect on the CCTV, not just Leo. Again, tracing his movements prior to the offence, and narrowing down that timeline, which they know is all around 3, but either side of that.
So it's similar to really what they did with Leo at the beginning, isn't it? Where they got his photo, they added it to the AI software. They can then find out if it brings him up, and I think they used the body cam footage, didn't they?
Yeah.
So they went back to look over the body cam footage from the first responders, and when the police were talking to Kian, it was a close-up, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So they could obviously take the image of that, run it through this AI system, and then put it in, and they put keywords in, didn't they, like wearing black, a bike.
Yeah.
And it brought all the images up, and then again, we had the officer there going through them.
And there were a couple that weren't correct.
Yes, there were. So you needed human.
Come down to humans confirming. But what they did confirm was that at 2:50, the suspect was in the area, and entered the park 20 minutes before Leo was believed to. Then cycled, again was seen after being interviewed at the scene when all of the other officers were there, cycled past officers, and one of the officers was like, oh, slow down, hang on a minute. And he kind of kept going and said, oh, I've already spoken to them down there. They said I could go. But in quite a hurry to get away.
To get out, didn't they?
Yeah.
And he wasn't seen leaving the park until after he'd spoke to the officers, so after sort of 4 p.m,
so
wasn't
he was
it?
in the area at the time, prior to the attack, and didn't leave until after Leo was found. Although that's a great positive, because it places him in the area, that would still only be circumstantial evidence.
Yeah, there's nothing still linking the victim to the suspect.
You need that DNA to come through, and unfortunately, no blood or fingerprints from the suspect were found on the knife, but there was also no DNA found linking to Leo on the knife, which then left them with nothing. They didn't then at that stage believe that that was the knife that had been involved in the attack.
Exactly, that could have been just some discarded weapon in the park, really. So at this point, they go back to the police station and they filter messages over the past 6 months. So when they're looking through them, they find a lot of messages between him and who they thought was maybe his girlfriend. And there was references to stabbing, to violence, to killing people. He'd even said in some of the messages, I'm going to go and kill someone, and the girlfriend had said, I won't let you do that, and he'd sort of said, how are you going to stop me? There was quite a lot of disturbing messages, I thought, in there for a 14-year-old.
Some of the messages said and again, it's always the abbreviations that make me really think about how young these people are, because you're talking about something really serious, but yet you're using the letter U rather than typing U. So there was a message that said stab you up when referencing a fight. There was also a message stating, gonna go to prison for killing my therapist, she's so annoying. Another said 25 years for murder in the UK. And
that shows his research, though.
Yeah.
He's researched the judicial... can't even say it. Judicial system. Yeah. And he knows a lot of background to it, doesn't he?
And then, again, when the girlfriend said, I won't let you, he said, you can't stop me. I'm going to go kill someone now. It made me wonder whether the girlfriend was potentially... He was speaking to someone not in the UK. Because he said, in the UK... 25 years. Yeah,
and if it's on the PlayStation, you could have met her online, like gaming or something like that. So,
but these are all in the kind of months leading up to Leo's death. Obviously not specifically relevant to Leo's case.
And there were no messages between Leo and him.
Comfortable with talking about violence, joking about violence, and specifically to stab injuries as well. But... as we said at the beginning, is this just trying to uphold a persona? Yeah.
Other offences actually took place in the park in the days before Leo's murder. And when these had been reported, they were quite extreme, don't you think? I feel like they started small, just pushing someone, and then they worked their way up, and these offences became quite serious with people getting injured.
If I'm completely honest, I was surprised that this didn't come up until 5 days into the investigation.
You'd have thought this would have come up earlier.
Because it's the same park. We now know that the suspect has been linked to an offence in that same park previously. But 2 days prior to Leo's murder, an 81-year-old was actually pushed from behind by someone on a bike. She actually, unfortunately, fell into the water and had broken her nose, and then was hit numerous times as well as. The following day, a young female, again walking through the park, was knocked down after being pushed from behind. And a third offence was another lone female, at this time 79. She was pushed, she screamed, turned around to confront her attacker, saw a young male on his bike who was smiling, and this was just half an hour before the attack on Leo. All victims had described a white male, mid-teens, black clothing, and on a push bike.
Yeah.
It's horrendous. And when you're letting when there's no motive and you're just picking people at random, it's like targeting people for sport, isn't it? It's horrendous.
Yeah, and I feel like these are gradually getting worse, and these people were all vulnerable and on their own. Like at one point, it's like he's targeting older females who are specifically on their own walking through the park.
Don't you think that says a lot about? He's obviously got an awareness that he's not as tough as he thinks he is, though.
Yeah, definitely.
If it is all the same person. So CCTV then obviously falls under a new remit because now they have to look at people in the area at that time for those other offences.
Yeah.
And very quickly, when they look back at body cam footage again and the description of what of the victims said, one of them said she felt like someone was hitting her on the head, a young kid ran past the scene, but was then seen observing from a distance the police and paramedics. And they suddenly realised that this could be a kind of MO of the suspect.
They like to watch the aftermath.
Like to see what unfolds, and they are not just trying to avoid. That then becomes really sinister because you think back to the footage in Leo's offence. Does that mean that Leo's murderer was stood right over him while paramedics are trying to save his life? You just can't imagine having that amount of, again, arrogance and ability to see what you have done, what is unfolding, the severity of your actions, how someone could be so cold.
Yeah.
So everything is circumstantial at this stage. You've got a suspect, but you've got no clear motive other than that they may be violent and be interested in seeing how these investigations unfold. But you've got no motive as to why Leo's been murdered, and you've got a lot of circumstantial evidence.
Yeah.
The search team in this case, I cannot believe how incredible they were. So dedicated. It's been going on for over a week now. You've got wet, windy, horrible conditions. The area that they were in is awful.
And you're probably feeling a bit deflated at this time, thinking nothing, we've not managed to find anything.
I also thought you've probably got a lot of the general public asking why they've not found anything, why the park's still closed, contending with all of that, but they haven't given up, not one bit. And as they widen the search to a new area, they actually did this off the back of one piece of CCTV footage. And they realised that in an area just kind of outside the park or nearby, there was an area commonly used for fly tipping. So to try and prevent that, and again, if you're in any other country and you don't know what fly tipping means, it's basically when people just dump their rubbish somewhere that it shouldn't be. So they'd put a camera up to dissuade people from dumping their rubbish, and they'd noticed that after Leo's death, their suspect was actually circling that area on the bike.
See, I thought this was really clever how they worked out the timings and stuff, didn't they?
But whereas before it was quite a slow circling of the area, there was this one bit where the suspect is a lot more haphazard almost.
Yeah, nearly falls off, doesn't he, coming around the corner.
Comes in more quickly, spins round, and it does seem a lot less controlled than one of these people that are just kind of pacing around the park. So they decide to extend the search area to around that location. Again, searching on hands and knees in undergrowth and in the water. And one of the officers or one of the search party actually finds another knife right on the edge of the water by the bank of the river. By now, chances of getting any DNA evidence are so slim because of the rainfall.
Yeah.
When they took pictures, you could see how wet the leaves were around it. You could see how wet the knife was. So it's so hard. But back at the lab, they did actually find a red-brown stain that appeared to be present near the knife handle. This, unfortunately, came back as negative and was not confirmed to be blood. But they then did a second test for DNA evidence. And finally, they get what they've been looking for. A profile found to match Leo's DNA, and the handle actually matched a second profile, matched their suspect.
Yeah, so now this is the first piece of evidence that's actually linked the suspect and our victim.
Categorically, can't deny it.
Yeah.
And they gave some percentage, didn't they? It was like 99.99% that it was couldn't have been anyone else.
Yeah.
So at that point, they then take him out of his cell and he is charged with the murder of Leo Ross and 3 counts of grievous bodily harm. You mentioned his name earlier, didn't you? So it's Cian Moulton. Who is then revealed to everyone really as being the suspect in question, to having carried a knife and to the 3 assaults prior on other victims.
Yeah. So with this one, Cian Moulton actually pled guilty to the murder of Leo, carrying a knife and the 3 assaults in the park. I didn't think he was going to plead guilty. I thought he was going to let it go to trial because he was just so arrogant all the way through everything that I thought there's no way that he's going to plead guilty. But then at some point had it set in and he thought,
Either that or it does sound like he had quite a clever lawyer.
Yeah.
From the statement, they probably said, you're better off
pleading,
taking the punishment and then starting your life afresh.
Yeah. So he was actually sentenced to 13 years in prison before he can be considered for parole. But
it doesn't seem a lot, does it? Especially for the amount of escalating violence that he was showing. Like, don't get me wrong, as I said, I completely understand that this is someone that's been through an awful lot in a short space of time, just 14 years, but that doesn't excuse violence, it doesn't excuse escalating violence, and certainly not killing Leo, who is a completely innocent boy.
If he wasn't caught, I've got no doubt that he would have escalated.
Continued to. Yeah.
And continued. There was the judge actually removed Cian's right to anonymity due to the lack of remorse and his escalating violence. So there wasn't even any remorse going through this. No. So I don't know.
It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really tough. Because usually when you're under 18, you can be kept anonymous. I mean, they waived the anonymity in the Bulger case as well, which we spoke about. And I think there's another one we spoke about as well where there was it Brianna's?
But that was, that was after the fact, wasn't it? There was quite a debate about it in the Bulger case.
Yeah.
What makes all of this even more heartbreaking is that Leo had actually been walking through the park along a 10-minute route from his secondary school while on the phone to a friend arranging to meet near a certain tree at the park. So he was just on his way to meet up with a friend after school. He turned up to meet his friend as planned, but Leo did not. The one thing that I thought was interesting about that is they never found Leo's phone.
I was just going to say the phone, never. Yeah. Maybe it's somewhere in the running water. Yeah. Maybe he threw it in the river and it's sort of washed away with that.
And Leo is, at this time, believed to be the youngest victim of knife crime in the West Midlands. The judge said that he was loved by all that knew him, with a future ahead of him. His family said, "We are truly devastated. Leo was the most beautiful soul, and a huge hole has been left in all of our hearts." They'd like to thank all that worked so hard to save his life and to all those involved in tracking down his killer.
And I think we need to remember in this case the age of both the victim and the offender, with Leo just being 12 years old, targeted on his way home from school for no reason. Yeah. These families have both lost their children, and that's what reminded me of when Esther spoke on the interview when we covered the Brianna Jai case. And Brianna's mom spoke and said, the offender's family have also lost a child.
And we don't really know, but obviously they gave the password for the PlayStation and things like that. So they must have been quite accommodating of the police.
It's just worrying that there was just still no remorse from him.
No. Rachel Fisher, Leo's mother, said that he was the most kind, funny and caring little boy. It should have never have happened. His life was only just beginning.
Yeah.
She said, I've lost everything. I did have and would have with him my firstborn child.
Oh. His
father said that Leo was loved by everyone, and everyone said how special he was. He was a real kind little boy. Again, it's so hard, and it appears that Leo had a foster family as well. So Amy Weston, who was a member of Leo's foster family, said Leo was a small, defensive child, as vulnerable as they come, and it was sickening. What you did was wicked, senseless and unforgivable. They had a picture of him when they came out of the courtroom, and read a statement saying, today's sentencing does not bring justice in the way our hearts long for. No sentence can ever undo or compensate for the loss of Leo, nor return him to us. Our family will live with this pain forever. Leo was taken from us with no reason whatsoever in a senseless and unprovoked attack of violence. He was deeply loved and should still be here, laughing, living and sharing life with us. So it's just such a tragic loss, and again another case where
such a young life.
There's no clear motive, and it's people not thinking through what their actions actually mean.
Yeah.
But hopefully we have, if you've not heard of that case before, let you learn a little bit about who Leo was, and
hopefully done it justice. Yeah.
So thanks again for watching or listening. Take care, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye.